"Don't touch me right now." She didn't scream it. She didn't whisper either. It rolled off her tongue like a line she'd practiced in front of a mirror 100 times. I froze, my hand suspended midair, hovering just above her shoulder like it didn't belong there. That's when it hit me. I hadn't touched my wife in 47 days. Not a brush of fingers by accident. Not our knees bumping on the couch. Not even a half-asleep hug in the dark when neither of us was awake enough to care. Nothing. 47 days. She stood there in the navy hoodie I'd bought her last Christmas, hair damp like she'd just stepped out of the shower. Only, the scent that drifted off her wasn't mine. It was someone else's cologne. I stepped back. Not because I was angry. Anger hadn't arrived yet. But because I suddenly felt like I was trespassing, like I'd wandered into a stranger's home. Everything looked the same. Beige walls, chipped kitchen tile, the oil stain on the living room carpet from when I dropped pad thai 3 years ago. But the woman in front of me? She wasn't the same person who once fell asleep on my lap while we watched nature documentaries. She turned away like nothing had happened, opened the fridge, and said casually, "We're out of oat milk. Can you grab some tomorrow?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My eyes had already drifted to her phone on the counter as it lit up with a message. Still thinking about this situation. "You're unreal." No name. Just a heart emoji. She didn't see me read it. Didn't even notice I was still standing there. So I walked out. Out the front door, past the mailbox I'd painted for her birthday. Past the car she always told me not to park too close to the hedge. I walked until my legs burned and my throat ached. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't ask why. The next morning, she posted a photo of her coffee on Instagram with the caption, "New beginnings." I hadn't left yet, but she had. That was the day I stopped waiting for her to come back and started planning her ending. If she thought "don't touch me right now" was a boundary, she had no idea what I was capable of once I stopped begging to be loved. She didn't knock on the guest room door that night. I waited anyway, like a fool, for footsteps, for the soft creak of the hallway, for any sign she cared I wasn't beside her. Nothing. Just silence. Heavy, humiliating silence. At 2:14 a.m., I unlocked my phone and scrolled through old texts, back when things weren't robotic. Her "I love yous" back then came out of nowhere. Now, they didn't come at all. I even found one from 2 years ago. "You make the world less sharp." That version of her was gone, replaced by someone sharper than glass. Razor sharp, cold, surgical. It felt like everything between us was being dissected without anesthesia, and I was the experiment. The next morning, she hummed in the kitchen. Actually hummed. A cheerful little pop song, like nothing was wrong. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, listening, wondering if I'd imagined the night before. Then her phone vibrated. Not once. Not twice. 5 times. I counted. By the 3rd ring, she was laughing on the call. Quietly, but laughing. Not the way we used to laugh at stupid rom-coms or our failed salsa lessons. This laugh was different. Light, careless. Like someone had reached into my chest and twisted something sacred. And that's when it stopped being about jealousy. It turned into a hunt for truth. I didn't confront her. That would have made me just another obstacle in her day. Instead, I started collecting evidence. Screenshots, photos of her phone when it lit up, syncing her calendar to my tablet when she wasn't looking. I didn't even know what I was after, just that I needed proof. Not for the courts, not even for friends. For me. To know I wasn't losing my mind. Friday, she told me she had an art class downtown, a 3-hour watercolor workshop. I offered to drive her. She smiled, too sweet, and said, "No need, babe. You'd be bored out of your mind." Babe. A word she hadn't thrown my way in months. It landed like acid. So I followed her. Waited 30 minutes after she left, then took my car. Kept a safe distance through traffic until she pulled into the side lot of a boutique hotel called the White Fern. I watched from across the street as she got out. No art supplies in sight. Just a little red bag from that flashy lingerie shop she used to avoid. Then a man in a charcoal blazer opened the door before she could even knock. He didn't look like a stranger. He looked like someone who already knew what color her bedroom walls were. I didn't go in. Didn't make a scene. I just took the photo. One single shot of them at the door, her smiling like I hadn't seen in 2 years. That picture burned into my brain and into 3 separate cloud backups, just in case I ever doubted myself or needed proof I wasn't the crazy one. Later that night, when she came home with damp hair, she looked at me like I was an old piece of furniture. "How was your class?" I asked, calm as anything. "It was expressive," she said, placing her phone carefully on the counter. "We painted roses." I stared straight at her and said, "Funny. You came back without your paintbrush." For a second, I thought I saw her mask crack. Just a second. Then she smirked and said, "You're reading into things again." I didn't answer. I just stood, grabbed my jacket, and walked out. Not forever. Just long enough for her to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was done trying. The next day, she cried. Not in front of me, of course, not her style. But I saw it anyway, clear as day, on the security footage she didn't know existed. Cameras I'd installed 2 weeks earlier, right outside the house. There she was, standing on the porch, eyes red, staring out at the driveway like she was watching the foundation of her life crack apart. She wiped her cheeks slowly, like someone finally admitting the walls were coming down. She had no clue it wasn't over yet, not even close. Because if she wouldn't give me the truth, I'd make her face it, piece by piece. And when I was done, there wouldn't be any humming in the kitchen. I didn't confront her after the hotel photo. That would have been the easy play, throw the evidence on the table and demand an explanation. But I didn't want explanations anymore. I wanted her to show me who she really was, without my prompting. I wanted her to unravel, thread by thread. Not because I wanted revenge for the sake of pain, but because after years of folding myself down to fit her version of me, I needed to see what happened when I stopped holding everything together. So I started a game. Silent. Precise. Controlled. She didn't even know she was playing. Step 1 was small, almost invisible. I canceled the automatic grocery orders. Nothing dramatic. But by day 3, she noticed. She opened the fridge and asked, "Did you forget the Instacart order?" I shrugged. Probably. That night she ate dry cereal without another word. One crack. Then I pulled back on texts. No big blowouts, no ghosting, just delays. Hours, sometimes the whole day. Always polite, never cold. "Sorry, busy afternoon. Just saw this." Soon, she was asking, "Is everything okay?" I'd reply with something vague like, "Just tired." But the real shift? It happened when I stopped asking her anything at all. No more, "How was your day?" No more, "What do you want for dinner?" I turned into a mirror, reflecting only what she gave me. And when she realized the spotlight wasn't on her anymore, she started to flicker. Desperate for a reaction, she tried harder. Lipstick at the dinner table. Sitting on the couch to watch documentaries with me, even though she scrolled her phone the whole time. She even suggested a weekend road trip to reconnect. That's when I knew she could feel it. That vacuum where the old me used to live. The husband who forgave, who asked, who smoothed over every rough edge. That guy was gone. And without him, she didn't know who she was. But the best move? She never saw it coming. I printed the hotel photo. Not digital. Physical. Matte finish. No note. No explanation. Just the image. Slipped it inside a blank birthday card. Then I waited for the perfect opening. It came a week later when she said she was going to a coworker's baby shower. She dressed up, sprayed perfume she hadn't touched in months, and left in a rush. That's when I slid the envelope into her makeup drawer, second layer down. Not hidden, just enough that she'd find it when she was alone, reapplying lipstick, maybe fixing her mascara. Somewhere private. I didn't want the fight. I wanted the silence afterward. That same day, I packed a bag and drove 3 hours north to my cousin Caleb's cabin. No note. No explanation. I didn't even turn off my phone, at first. I just let myself vanish. I wanted her to sit with it, to hold that photo and feel it burning through her skin. When I got to the cabin, I powered the phone down. No laptop. No distractions. Just a stack of logs and the sound of my own breathing. For 2 whole days, I went completely off the grid, imagining her tearing through the house, calling, texting, maybe even checking with my coworkers. I pictured the exact moment she'd open the envelope and see herself in that doorway, caught. Not a selfie she could edit, not something she could spin. Just raw proof. When I finally turned my phone back on, There were 12 missed calls and 6 texts. The first 4 were soft. Hey, just checking in. Where are you? Then came, did you go through my things? And finally, please call me. I didn't answer. Not yet. The next day, I drove home like nothing happened. She was waiting in the doorway barefoot, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were rimmed red, but she didn't cry, not in front of me. She never did. Why would you leave that photo like that? She asked, voice thin. I walked past her, hung my coat, and said, you always told me you hated surprises. Figured this one wouldn't disappoint. She followed me into the kitchen, firing questions I ignored. How long have you known? Did you follow me? Are you going to tell anyone? Her voice was quick, sharp, not scared of me, but terrified of what came next. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I just said, there's nothing to tell. You already lived it. Then I poured myself a glass of water and left her standing there, because the unraveling had only just started. That night, she tried to take the wheel back. It was subtle at first. She cooked dinner, something she hadn't done in months. Set the table for 2. Chicken marsala. Candlelight. Cloth napkins. I watched her light the wick with trembling hands and sit across from me like this was some kind of resurrection, like she could drag the ghost of our old life into the room if she performed the ritual well enough. I didn't speak. I ate slow. Every bite felt like chewing drywall. Halfway through, she said, so you've known for a while. Not a question, an admission. She was probing, trying to see how deep the knife went. I set my fork down, looked her dead in the eye, and said, since the first time you told me you were tired, while your hair was still damp and your phone stayed silent. She flinched. Not a meltdown, nothing dramatic, just enough for me to notice the crack forming in her mask. She nodded slowly, pushing food around her plate like it had answers, then whispered something I don't think she ever intended to say out loud. I thought I could control it, that it would stay small. That's all she called it. Not a mistake. Just it. Like giving it a name would make it real. I didn't respond. I had zero interest in helping her confess. I wasn't her priest. Later that night, I found her on the floor of our walk-in closet, knees tucked to her chest, staring at the shoebox where she kept old letters from me. Letters I hadn't seen in years. She didn't touch them, just stared, like the box was holding some forgotten version of herself she'd lost the password to. I never wanted this to turn into a war, she said suddenly, voice small. I didn't think it would hurt you this way. That was the moment I realized she'd convinced herself that what she did wasn't violent. That stepping out of our marriage, lying to my face, sleeping with someone else, pretending she still loved me. In her mind, it was all forgivable. Why? Because she hadn't screamed. Because she hadn't thrown plates. She believed her silence made it less cruel. Like the absence of chaos somehow canceled the betrayal. So I asked her, when did you stop believing I mattered? Her head snapped up. That's not fair. No. I folded my arms. You think I didn't notice when you stopped asking how I slept? When you walked out of the room, every time I tried to talk about anything that wasn't your life. I didn't stop caring. So why do you give yourself to someone else like I was just a roommate with a mortgage? Silence. And then, finally, a whisper. Because I wanted to feel wanted. It didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how little it hurt to hear. The next morning, her car keys were still on the hallway shelf. She hadn't gone to work. Instead, she sat on the back porch in that same navy hoodie, drinking coffee and staring at the yard like it had secrets. She didn't notice me watching her through the blinds. That's when I made the second move. I called the leasing office for an apartment complex across town. 1 bedroom, corner unit, no shared walls. I didn't even ask to see it. Wired the deposit, signed the lease under my middle name. Quiet. No ceremony. That same afternoon, I packed a single suitcase, just the essentials. Left the rest behind. The shirts she never folded, the worn-out shoes she teased me about, even the wedding photo on the hallway wall. I didn't flip it down. It didn't deserve the drama. No note this time either. Just an envelope on her pillow. Inside, a printed screenshot of a bank transfer, half the joint savings, down to the last cent. Beneath it, one line, this is what fairness looks like. Then I walked out. No slamming doors. No soundtrack of rage. Just the soft click of the handle, and the hush of goodbye. And I swear, as I pulled out of that driveway, I didn't feel like I was leaving home. I felt like I was stepping into it for the first time. I didn't expect silence. I thought there'd be texts, calls, maybe a voicemail packed with words like regret or mistake. But the first 48 hours? Nothing. No contact. No notifications. Just the hum of solitude inside a small corner apartment with beige walls, a leaky faucet, and no history baked into it yet. And that was the strangest part. Peace didn't feel like relief. It felt like shock. Like after a car accident, when you're walking around without a scratch, but your brain hasn't caught up. I kept expecting her to show up at the door in that oversized hoodie, smelling like that cologne that wasn't mine. But she never did. And that's when it hit me. Darla, yeah, I'll use her name now, wasn't looking for me. She was waiting to see if I'd come crawling back. She mistook silence for hesitation. What she didn't know was that I wasn't deciding. I was watching. 2 days later, she finally reached out. Not a text. Not a call. She posted a photo on Instagram, standing barefoot in the backyard, wind catching her hair just enough to look cinematic. Caption, still standing. I stared at that post for a long time. 12 likes. One comment from someone named Lux_Heart82. You always were. I clicked the profile. Private account. But the picture? I knew it instantly. Charcoal blazer. Hotel doorway. The same man holding that little red boutique bag for her. The man frozen in that damning photo I'd taken weeks ago. And now here he was, leaving comments like he owned the story. What disturbed me wasn't the comment. It was that she left it there, visible, untouched. She was testing me. Or worse, she didn't care. I didn't react. I let it sit. But I started planning again. I knew she'd check the bank activity. See the split. Wonder where my half went. So I opened a new account, moved the funds, and sent a final transfer to a name she hadn't seen in years, my sister. The same sister Darla always called dramatic. Judgmental. Funny thing about judgmental people, they come in handy when you're cleaning up someone else's mess. My sister had been watching this whole thing from the sidelines, biting her tongue for years while I got chipped away piece by piece. And now, she was furious. Not for me. She was past sympathy, but for the years wasted watching her brother disappear under someone else's shadow. I gave her everything. The backup drive with screenshots, GPS records, recovered emails Darla thought she'd deleted. And then I waited. Because Darla wasn't just careless. She was arrogant. The next night, at 2:12 a.m., my phone lit up. One message. No greeting. Just 4 words. What did you do? No context. No punctuation. No name. Just 4 words. I smiled when I read them because the truth was, I hadn't done a damn thing. Not yet. But someone else had. My sister had posted a thread. Anonymous, but sharp enough to cut through steel. A long, searing post on a popular relationship forum titled, When You Discover Your Sister-in-Law's Affair, and She Still Plays the Victim. She didn't write Darla's name. She didn't have to. The details spoke louder than a signature. The pattern was there for anyone to follow. The hotel. The boutique. The art class. The man who thought a charcoal blazer in June was a good idea. And the husband who finally stopped apologizing for existing. By morning, the comments were flooding in. Strangers dissecting every detail. People speculating, screenshotting, connecting dots like detectives on a caffeine high. Someone even matched a blurry background in one of Darla's Instagram photos to the exact room number at the White Fern Hotel. By noon the next day, her social media was gone. Vanished. Wiped clean, just like her excuses. She called me once that afternoon. I let it ring. Then a text. You said you wouldn't go nuclear. I replied, I didn't. You did that yourself. I just stopped shielding you from the blast. She didn't answer. And in that silence, I knew she finally understood. This wasn't revenge. This was exposure. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't humiliated her. I didn't smash plates or drag her name through the mud. I just opened the door and let the truth walk out on its own. And once it got a taste of freedom, there was no putting it back in the box. The first time she knocked on the door of my apartment, I didn't open it. Not out of fear. Not out of spite. Not to make a point. I didn't open it because I wanted her to feel, just for 1 minute, what it was like to stand on the outside of something you once thought you owned. She stayed for 15 minutes. I know because the camera I'd installed above my door caught it all. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stood there, frozen, a silhouette of someone finally realizing silence had become permanent. She didn't come back the next day, but the world did. Screenshots of that thread had started spreading. Quiet coworkers, distant family. Even her Pilates instructor sent me a message. I'm sorry. I should have said something months ago. That one landed harder than I expected. Not because I needed validation, but because it meant people had seen. They'd seen and stayed silent. That's the part no one warns you about. Betrayal doesn't just cut because of a liar. It cuts because of the witnesses who looked away. The silence of bystanders can feel louder than the crime. But I didn't react. I didn't post. I didn't reply. I let Darla spiral in the vacuum she created. Because now, without my silence protecting her, every move she made was visible. Every crack was undeniable. 3 days after the thread blew up, she called again. This time, I answered. Her voice sounded flat, like someone speaking through smoke. You think this makes you look strong? I let the question sit there before answering. No, I think it makes me look honest. She scoffed, but the sound was hollow. Do you know how much I've lost in a week? You mean attention? That landed like a punch. Silence stretched, so long I thought she'd hung up. But then, you're acting like you never made mistakes. And that's the line I'll remember most from that call. Not the weak accusations. Not the defensiveness. Just those words. Like her betrayal was some balancing act for sins I never committed. I asked her, calm and clear, what exactly did I do wrong, Darla? Did I forget to change your oil? Did I not compliment your haircut fast enough? Did I love you too quietly while you ran out of reasons to respect me? No answer. So I kept going. Because if you're looking for justification, you're going to need a better story than you didn't inspire me anymore. The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was clean, surgical. And then, finally, she said something I didn't expect. I want to go to counseling just to understand what went wrong. I didn't laugh, didn't yell. I just said, I already understand. She asked what I meant, and I told her the truth. Some people don't cheat because they're unhappy. They cheat because they can't handle being loved without chaos. You needed friction to feel alive. And when I gave you peace, you turned it into emptiness. There was a pause. Then, in the smallest voice, she whispered, you didn't love me wrong. You just loved me in a way I couldn't return. And there it was, the most honest thing she'd said in 3 years. I ended the call without bitterness. No dramatic goodbye. Just, please don't come here again. There's nothing left to recover. But she came back. Not to me. She showed up at my sister's place that weekend. My sister called me, furious. Said Darla knocked on her door wanting to clear the air. My sister told her to clear the sidewalk instead. When Darla didn't move, she handed her an envelope. Sealed. I didn't know what was inside until later. It was a printout of a group chat, one I'd never seen before. Messages dated months back. Screenshots of Darla bragging about how checked out I was. Joking about the hotel weekends. Laughing about how easy it was to train him to disappear without a fight. That one made my hands shake. Not from sadness. From vindication. Because you can doubt memories. You can question motives. But screenshots? They're gospel. I stared at that line about me, disappearing without a fight, and said it out loud to the empty room. You were right about one thing. I did disappear. But the fight? That part was just getting started. I didn't expect her to show up at my office. Not after the screenshots. Not after the avalanche. But she did. Dressed head to toe in black. Like she was mourning a version of herself that never really lived. She didn't demand to speak to me. She just stood by the elevator, arms crossed, waiting like maybe I'd walk down and magically unsee everything I now knew. Grant, my coworker, popped his head into my office. There's a woman downstairs, he said. Says she won't leave unless you talk to her. I didn't answer, just stared out the window for a full minute. Then I stood, walked to the break room, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and came back to my desk. 10 minutes later, she was gone. That night, she texted, please. 5 minutes. Just 5. I ignored it. Not to punish her. Not to play games. I just had nothing left to give. Whatever love I'd saved for her had burned itself out somewhere between that hotel receipt and the line about training me to disappear. And now? Now she was just someone I used to know the middle name of. But then the next message came. I'm not with him anymore. I stared at it, not because it changed anything, but because I finally understood what she thought this was about. She believed if she cut him loose, the bridge to our past would magically rebuild itself. She thought this was about him. So I replied with the only thing left worth saying. I wasn't destroyed because of who you slept with, Darla. I was destroyed because of how easily you watched me fall apart and said nothing. No reply. But the next morning, she posted an old photo, 3 years back, at a lake in Montana. I was holding a fish I didn't catch. She was laughing in the background. Caption: there are things I can't fix, but I'll never forget the quiet way he held everything together. That post racked up over 200 likes, including one from her ex-affair partner. Poetic, in a sick way. She was trying to repaint the past in soft, nostalgic tones, like that could smooth the jagged edges of the truth. But nostalgia without accountability? That's just manipulation dressed up as a pretty thought. A week later, a certified letter showed up. Inside, one typed page. No greeting. No signature. Just a single line. I didn't expect to break you. I thought you were unshakable. And that's when it finally sank in. What this really was. An experiment. She didn't cheat out of passion or longing or some whirlwind of need. She did it to test the limits of my love. To see how far she could bend me before I snapped. But I never snapped. I didn't explode. I didn't make a scene. I vanished. Quietly, completely. No fireworks. No warnings. Just gone. And now she was the one standing in the ashes of something she never thought would burn. A few days later, another letter came. This one from a lawyer. She'd filed for divorce. No dramatic scene. No begging. Just paperwork, neatly folded, crisp, impersonal. She signed it with her full name. Not Mrs. Collins. Just Clara Winslow. Her maiden name, like I never existed. I signed without hesitation. Drove the envelope to the post office myself. No return address. She didn't need to know where I was. She already knew what I'd become. The man who stayed loyal longer than she deserved. The man who left quieter than she expected. And the man who, in the end, didn't just walk away. He slipped through every door she thought was locked. It's been 6 months since I last saw her. No run-ins. No digital footprints. Just gone. She vanished from my life the same way I vanished from hers years ago, when she stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as furniture. Background noise. Something steady she didn't have to earn. And here's the strangest part. I don't hate her. I thought I would. Thought I'd carry bitterness like a second spine. But it never came. Not even when I heard she moved to another state. Not even when a mutual friend mentioned she was seeing someone new. Quietly this time. No posts. No drama. She finally learned the cost of being careless with someone's soul. But by then, I had already healed more than I ever thought possible. Not in some cinematic moment. Not with fireworks or epiphany. Just slowly. Quietly. Like fog lifting in the early hours. The man I used to be. The one who laughed without waiting for permission. Who made pancakes at midnight just because. He came back. So did the guy who painted in the garage, even though he sucked at it. I started painting again. Bad landscapes, mostly. Sunsets that looked like melted sherbet. Trees with too many branches. But I loved it. Because creating something purely for joy, that's rebellion in a world obsessed with measurement. I made new friends. Not the kind who asked what happened, but the kind who asked what's next. One of them, Ivy, owns a bookstore near my new place. We met when she caught me rearranging her shelves by color instead of genre. She laughed instead of scolding me. Said, I do that when I'm avoiding something too. We started talking, then walking, then sharing things we didn't even know we remembered. By the second week, I told her about the divorce. I didn't want to pretend I was anything other than what I was, someone healing. She didn't flinch, just nodded and said, you don't look broken. You look rebuilt. That line stuck, because for the first time in years, I did feel rebuilt. Not glued back together. Whole. Not patched. Not glued. Just whole. A different shape than before, sure, but whole all the same. Last weekend, I went back to that lake in Montana. The one from the old photo of us. Not for nostalgia. Not to dig through the past. I went because I needed to prove something, that I could return without carrying her ghost on my shoulders. And I did. I stood on that same dock. Same breeze. Same endless water stretching out in front of me. But this time, I wasn't holding a fish I didn't catch. I was holding a canvas. A painting I'd finished the night before. Nothing special. Just the lake, the trees, and a lone figure standing at the edge of it all. Not waiting. Just existing. I left the painting on a bench by the trail. Taped a note to the back. Who you used to be is not a prison. You can walk out whenever you're ready. I don't know who found it. Maybe no one. Maybe someone who needed it. Doesn't matter. Because here's what I know now. I didn't need closure from her. I gave it to myself. And that, quiet, simple, unceremonious, that was the most peaceful goodbye I've ever said.